Disclaimer. This is the Quibbcast.
It is about four nerds who don't want to live in the real world.
So we decided to make one of our own.
Literally, make one of our own. It's the Quibbcast. It's the Quibbcast. It's the Quibbler podcast.
Hello and welcome back to episode 3 of the Quibbcast. My name's Grace and I'm here today with...
Ellis.
Jack?
And Sarah.
So today it's going to be something a little bit different. Today we're going to be having a bit of a debate, and this has come from the fact that Jack and Sarah like to argue about everything. So today's debate is all about the idea of a hero and an anti-hero, and when is a hero or when is he an anti-hero? So, or she, yeah, sorry, my mistake. When are they an anti-hero? So who would like to kick this one off?
I suppose let's start on an easy one.
Yeah.
The classic anti-hero that we all know and love, Deadpool.
Yeah, it's a good shout. So he's clearly an anti-hero because the big deal is he kills. And that's kind of a moral code that we say heroes to a standard that we see them as they don't kill. Well,
I was going to say,
in a
avoidance.
Marvel movie, in a comic book film.
Yeah.
So DC, Marvel, whatever.
Yeah.
The standard that we set our heroes to is that they don't kill anyone.
Yeah.
is that the only thing we're using to define an anti-hero then? As a,
No.
as a
But
good
I think
guy
that's
who kills?
I think that's a starting point. I think it's also that an anti-hero isn't... Like with the typical Marvel heroes, they're quite family friendly. I would not want to put Deadpool next to my kid. Because he'd probably swear.
He's great with kids.
He's great. Well, true, he's probably great with kids, but that type of adult, he's a child in this adult-orientated world where there is blood, there is guts, there is sexual content. Compared to what our typical heroes that we would say, like Captain America, I wouldn't see in any form of predicament like Deadpool or react in that way.
I don't think it's down to the gore and the blood and the whatever. Because
No?
if you take things like, I don't know, Iron Man,
Yeah.
he gets blown up.
Mm-hmm.
That's blood, gore, whatever. I
Yeah.
think it's to do with the morals of the person. So people like Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, they're like driven by kind of good and a bigger cause.
Yeah.
Whereas Deadpool would go, I want my girlfriend back, I'm gonna go get her.
So there's a selfishness to an anti-hero.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's kind of difficult to put Iron Man in that kind of bracket because of how he made his fortune, do you not think? That yes, he might have learned from that experience, but at the same time, he still lived most of his life making and selling weapons to use in war.
Yeah.
So would he be an anti-hero because of his past, or are we just saying from the moment they are a hero, that is when we can class them as an anti-hero or a hero, or do we have to include all of the stuff that has happened to them that has led up to that point as part of their...
Because if you
Yeah, part of the whole
if you
circle.
want to go that way about it,
Yeah.
you have to take into account, like we always say, Deadpool, classic anti-hero. However, if you take in his past, he's a war vet.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
Which-
war vets still kill people. Maybe for a
in
good
like
cause,
a-
or
Yeah,
not a good
in a
cause.
social
but
setting, you look at a war veteran and you go, wow, what a hero.
But then you put into account that in his past as well, he's a man for hire. I mean, in terms of the film, the first thing he does is threaten a teenager who's stalking a girl. So it happens.
So who else would you guys argue is an anti-hero? So obviously we've said Iron Man and Deadpool. There's someone from outside of a superhero universe that you would consider?
Well, for me, I keep thinking. I think the Red Hood is a good example, and that's Jason Todd.
So is that in a superhero universe?
Yeah, it's a superhero universe.
Yeah.
I have to, yeah.
I've got one.
But then I want, yeah, go on.
Sam and Dean for Supernatural.
And why are they?
If you take in account their storyline for the first 3 seasons of the show, it's very much about their own personal vendetta. And while they go along that journey, they save people and they look out for people. But very much the idea is that they have an end goal that benefits them. So as much as we look at them as the hero of the story, are they actually a hero? Because there's that element of selfishness there.
But you could say the same. Could you say the same about Eleven out of Stranger Things? Because obviously her background, she's obviously been manipulated to have these powers and use them for evil. But when she has a will of her own, she actually uses those powers for good. I mean, I always struggle to kind of, if we're saying that anti-heroes specifically are when they kill. Technically, people like Captain America who've killed aliens, that's still killing something. Just because it's hostile towards us does not mean that the aliens don't have a family at home.
No, but I think that's a good point. I think in terms of with the likes of Deadpool, though, he clearly enjoys it, and there's a kind of line in, I think it's Captain America, when a soldier he comments on that he and a lot of men in World War II had to do stuff they weren't happy to do, but it was to benefit other people.
But then by
so
that definition, Crash Bandicoot, who jumps on turtles, is also an anti-hero. And I don't see Crash Bandicoot as an anti-hero.
Are we not mixing up the word anti-hero and protagonist there a bit though?
I think, but that's what I think is the point is that, just because someone kills and it's to do with their morals necessarily, I think it is mainly to do with their attitude and the idea that, like you were saying about like Captain America killing the aliens and all that, that's the same sort of idea that, pretty much any protagonist that you watch or you play, as in games or read about or whatever, they have that sort of progression where they do bad things to bad people, but it's fine because they're bad people and they deserve it. That doesn't necessarily make them an anti-hero, so it is about their outlook and their enjoyment necessarily, maybe, on...
I suppose it all depends on the perspective that you go from. So if you're playing something like Battlefield 1, you're playing from the American soldiers or whatever, great. We think of ourselves as a Western society. Yeah, the Americans are in the right. We're doing our thing for our country and blah blah blah. But imagine someone from Afghanistan, Iraq, or wherever playing that game. You're going out and killing your own people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's that to take into consideration as well.
Yeah, I think perspective does play an important role, whether or not you as a viewer want to take them on as a hero or a villain. I think a good example in gaming is, because you brought up Battlefield, is Spec Ops: The Line.
Yeah.
Because that involves you as a US soldier going into a wrecked Dubai after a sandstorm, and your main job is to save civilians that are trapped in there.
Yeah.
And what you end up doing at one point is you use a common thing in gaming now, which is a kind of, it's like a bird's eye view shot, and you would be dropping either a bomb, in this case it's called White Phosphorus, and you end up killing all the civilians you're there to save. And then you're kind of in this moral dilemma of, you now need to carry on, but your mission is skewed because you've decided as a player to just bomb it.
Well, because that was a big thing in like the Call of Duty games, wasn't it? That sort of top-down bombing view. You just
Modern Warfare.
Yeah, you just see like the outlines of people running, and you're like, oh, cool, so those are the bad guys.
Yeah.
And I think Spec Ops: The Line did a really good thing of like turning that around, and when you actually walk through, you see that they're not. And that is an interesting sort of dynamic, I might say. But
yeah.
The idea of them, they do see themselves as the hero, but I still don't necessarily think that makes them anti-heroes. I think for me, an anti-hero is someone who does whatever they want, however they want to do it, takes enjoyment in what they're doing, but along the way has sort of kind of accidentally almost saved the world, if you know what I mean. Maybe it is something they set out to do, but the way they go about it isn't, their intention isn't to go and save the world. It is, like you said earlier, about like the whole selfishness and things like that. I think that's the main point for me that makes someone an anti-hero.
I was going to say, with like, just going off that point, in terms of someone's actions, is an anti-hero made from having an action that could be viewed as villainous, but because of their morale, they're still could be considered a hero, and that's that conflict with them. They're not really a hero, and they're not really a villain, but they are like labelled as this anti-hero because their actions in turn could be viewed as quite villainous and vindictive.
Well, it's like, I think, really important if we're going to try and work out the difference. Like, we need to work out what a hero is.
I'm going to say, what character in anything do you feel like forms the depiction of the word hero, who is exactly like the word hero? And I don't know if there is one.
I have one that I could
Wonder
put
Woman.
forward. And that I feel I feel like that can may cause a bit of a stir. Megamind from the film Megamind. I think that his whole arc and the whole dynamic, like the whole thing with him, is that he is a true hero because as much as he does all the bad stuff in the beginning, he has that past. By the end of it, he does things for the best, for what's best for everyone else. As much as part of it is that he wants to be forgiven by the girl he loves, his main focus is that he needs to save Metrocity, as he calls it, from the bad guy that he has created, and I think that's what makes him a hero.
You see, I disagree. I think I think everything that he does for a selfish reason in order to get, I can't remember the main hero's name.
The Superman type of character.
Yeah.
Brad
Metro
Pitt.
Yeah,
That's
Metro
it.
Man.
I know too much about Megamind. Carry on.
No, I feel like everything that he does is for him to find where Metro Man is, and the fact that he's created this villain in the process,
That's not to bring up Metro Man though. His whole stuff I can't believe we're now having a debate about bloomin' Megamind. But the whole point, my whole point is that as much as what he sets out to do originally is selfish, he has that arc and that sort of realisation at the end of the film that what he needs to do is save everyone. Not for the good of himself. He ends up sacrificing himself. I'm really passionate about this. He ends up sacrificing himself almost to save someone, and to save Metro City. And I think that proves that he is a hero because he's had that arc.
I don't think he's a hero.
I think
he
is.
did something heroic.
But by the end of it, he has become a hero. I think by having that heroic action and having his mindset changed from the bad things that he may have necessarily put into place, because it's nothing to do with him finding Metro Man, because as far as he's concerned, he's killed him, which is why he tries to create Titan, to have a good guy to fight against, who inadvertently goes bad. Sorry, spoilers for Megamind if no one's watched it yet. But, you know, I think
As
that by the end of
someone
it,
who doesn't really care about Megamind,
I don't...
or I don't actually think I've seen all of it. So thanks for ruining it, basically.
My point is more, I think by the end of it, I would feel comfortable calling him a hero.
Because he's redeemed.
But what makes him a hero and not someone who's done something heroic?
I think it's all to do with his redemption and his change of attitude, and I think it's his attitude at the end that's what makes him a hero.
See, I think I want to relate it back to like real life really quickly. So we always say like firefighters are heroes, and police are heroes, and ambulance drivers are heroes. They are everyday heroes. What about them is heroic? That, like, obviously they're doing something that puts themselves in danger and saves other people. A lot of the time. So is it that blatant kind of almost disregard for your own safety and a willingness to put someone else's safety over your own that creates a hero?
Yeah, I think there's got to be an act of selflessness, because if there's self-gain, then clearly you're not doing it for a wider appeal. You're doing it for yourself and self-gain, like with what's the right one? Like with Deadpool, he does it for money, or Punisher does it because under his guise he lost his family due to a gang war, and in turn he must kill every gang. But it's clearly an also way for him to vent and the way to exceed his kind of frustration. I think going back to Iron Man, in terms of that being an anti-hero, I think what you said about Megamind is interesting. You watch these kind of morally grey characters kind of go through a redemption to be, at the end, for us as a viewer, to be morally clean. And because now we view them as morally clean, we go, well, they must be the hero, because they're either righting a wrong that they did, which is, I wouldn't say is really, I don't know. Would you say righting a wrong? It's a grey area because you're rewriting a wrong that you did. So is that selfish or is that selfless? Because now you're taking responsibility.
I think the point is the reasoning behind it. I would see it as selfish if it was, again, Megamind just trying to win back the woman that he loves.
Yeah.
But the point is by that point he's doing it to just save the city. He's just doing it so that everyone there can live their life. And if she loves him back, that's a bonus, but that's not his main focus at this point. His main focus is to fix the thing that he's done wrong to save everyone.
Yeah.
And he's not doing it because that's his thing that he's done wrong. He is taking responsibility for it, but it's because he knows that no one else will step up and do it. And I think that's what gives him that sort of heroicness, is because that's his choice that he's doing for a good reason.
Yeah.
Whereas Metro Man does a selfish thing by pretending to die and hiding out so he can practice playing guitar in his little hideout, and he refuses to come back and save the city.
Yeah.
He's been a hero throughout the rest of the film. Throughout all of his life, he's been seen as the hero. But that one selfish act has immediately, I think, removed the heroicism from him.
Yeah.
But then he doesn't become an anti-hero.
No, that's my point. He's not the anti-hero, and I'm just saying that Megamind may be seen as an anti-hero to some, but to me, he is a hero.
I think in terms of I think that's a really good point. I think in terms of like heroes, I think there has to be some sort of, or should I say, for the hero archetype we're talking about, there has to be some way of them taking on responsibility. I think an obvious example is Spider-Man, although I would argue that character in itself is the exact opposite of responsible, because he does a lot of stuff that we can understand is a bit like, oh yeah, we're a teenager, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want a bit of freedom, but there is an act of responsibility he still does, because he wants both lives. He wants to be a teenager, but he also wants to do the right thing.
I think largely everything he does is for a good reason.
It's for a good reason, but it does have an effect, because majority of his villains are born out of they're usually close friends or close associates or close role models that become villainous, and they're usually down to Peter not being there for them because he's doing the responsible thing, or Peter accidentally creates them as his alter ego. I think in terms of villain, if you have to define a hero, you also have to define the villain, because that's the only way we can get in between the two. I think like with the character the Joker, in terms of how he was depicted in the recent film, you're dealing with a character who gets bullied, gets shunned by all societies, higher class and lower class don't want him, he is just isolated from everyone. And then we watch him progress and transform and kind of accept this kind of identity that he's created, or is still creating in the film. And then we see him do what he does, and then we go, well, now you're the villain. But there's a sense of sympathy to it, like the same way there's a sense of sympathy towards the villain like Syndrome. We feel bad that Mr. Incredible won't give this kid a chance. But yet, you know, in the end, we hate him because he's clearly villainous in his intent, because of what he tries to do with, you know, Bob's kids. He tries to kill the entire family on the plane, and so on and so forth. So I think in terms of anti-hero...
Right, hold on. Why are we just talking about cartoons?
I'm so sorry. I was like...
I think you've got a fair point there, because
Yeah.
I think we've got to be careful, because if we start seeing the good in everyone, then everyone becomes a hero. And
Yeah.
if everyone's a hero,
No
one
one
is.
Well, I mean, if you think about it though, again, bringing it back to kind of real life,
Yeah.
freedom fighters, hero or villain. To us, freedom fighters, you know, if you want to look at ISIS or whoever, villains to us.
Yeah.
You know, but if you want to look at freedom fighters, you know, IRA, heroes in Ireland.
Yeah.
A lot of people really, really respect people that were in the IRA. But we look at them as terrorists. So it's one of those things where it's perspective all over again.
Yeah.
You know, to Harlequin, that came out really wrong.
Harley Quinn.
To Harley Quinn, Joker's a hero.
Yeah.
Which is why I think Birds of Prey is going to be really interesting. Because
Yeah.
it's going to be the
Very
first sort of like
interesting.
big thing that we're going to
Well,
get
it's
to see of
what?
her.
A
women-led.
woman-led film
Woman directed.
where we're going to fall in love with the bad girls.
Yeah.
Of
But
Marvel.
like, you could say the same
DC.
about
DC.
things
Oh,
like...
good God!
Get
I
out.
need to go home.
Jesus Christ.
No, I feel the same about films like Ocean's 8.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like you always want them to succeed, even though you know that they're doing something highly illegal, but you still want them to succeed.
I think the problem that I have is with things like those sort of films, like women-led films where they're criminals, they get away with more, I think, because they're women. To me, like, I'd much rather see a woman getting away with a crime than I would a man, which is a whole other topic. But I think that that's something that's quite an interesting dynamic as well, is that a lot of the women that are becoming anti-heroes in big films are more interesting and intriguing to watch, because it's something that women don't normally do. Normally it's like the men that sort of do it. I think that's something that we can touch on another time, but that was just interesting because I noticed that from there.
And from this, how do we think that all of this relates to theatre, or our theatre that we want to make, kind of thing? So geek theatre as a form, how does the differentiation between hero and anti-hero, and maybe even theatre and not theatre, kind of meld together? How do we think that melds?
I think a very important thing, just in general, to do with theatre and the idea of, you know, heroes and protagonists and everything, is when you're watching something, you're automatically rooting for the person you see the most. Whereas in the theatre that we do, and obviously the show that you guys have done, there's no one that's a hero or villain. There's not like an overarching narrative that makes people bad or good. It's all about the people in that moment, and I think the way that we respond to those people is similar, that we have a sort of assumption that that person's going to be a big part, and then you know what I mean? I feel like I'm sort of rambling, but
No,
go on.
Sorry, it just made me think of something in Thought You Ought to Know. We didn't really talk about very many villains or anti-heroes, really.
No.
We had Green Goblin.
Yeah. We have
I'm
Mystique.
trying to think through.
Mystique.
No, I mean, I talked about Jurassic Park, but you can't really call a Tyrannosaurus Rex a villain because it doesn't.
No,
have
it's just living by
because
nature.
But
You know,
yeah, I was going to say 'cause
everyone
it doesn't
there.
have any moral. It doesn't have any moral
No.
idea. It just sees food and goes, "I want to eat."
Uh,
So-
Yeah, I don't think we really touched upon villainry because I think we just decided that
we wanted the
we
positive.
wanted all the positive
Yeah.
things and we wanted all the things we love, but actually we love our villains.
Well, I was going to say, we did have the alien from War of the Worlds come down, and that's
But
definitely
then
not
I
a
don't
protagonist.
think that's...
Arguably,
It's
they're
iconic.
not
I don't,
villains.
yeah, I don't think that was us going, ha ha ha, that's a bad thing. Because
Right.
I then raised my arms and was like, yes,
Yeah.
to it. Like praising it for coming down and being like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I think we've got to remember that you can't necessarily have good without bad, and I think the good people can't rise to be heroes without the bad people trying to bring them down and being villains. And I think especially when you've got that grey area of the heroes and anti-heroes, I think we'd have more anti-heroes if there wasn't a clear line of what good and evil was
Yeah.
in a lot of things that we watch.
Yeah, but going back to how it, I think, relates to what we do then in geek theatre is almost only showing the good.
Yeah.
I'm going to say like that also happens throughout the creative process. You have bad ideas.
Oh yeah.
Everyone has bad ideas. And then you originally think that they're good, and then you play them out and you're like, this is absolute trash. We cannot include this whatsoever. Absolutely not.
90% of our performance was cut.
God, you should have seen the stuff from us that wasn't.
But no, so I feel like there's a lot of grey area between what makes a good performance and what makes a bad performance, because there is an equal amount of good in our performance as bad in our performance, I think.
I think a good example of an anti-hero for performance is when we went to go and see Real Magic, because that subjectively and academically is a really good and interesting
Yes.
performance.
So just for context, Forced Entertainment did a performance called Real Magic, which was a durationally long...
It wasn't even duration.
It was.
It felt really
It
long.
was an hour and 10,
An hour and 10 minutes, and it was
and
just...
it felt like 3 days.
It was essentially the same script over and over again over the course of an hour and 10 minutes. And
the same scenarios, the same kind of end place, just how they got there changed ever so slightly each time.
yep.
It really tested our will.
And it was very clear that it would not end unless the performer said something very specific, and they kept on going to and never did, and that really raised the frustrations within the audience.
Yeah.
And I think,
think
dynamically, academically, aesthetically,
I think
just the
every
whole idea.
single person came out of the theatre feeling so angry for even walking in.
We paid £5 for that. Whenever it was.
yeah,
I remember being like, I spent good money on this and it was absolute trash. But then like when I...
Please remember, we were uni students and very, very broke.
But at the same time, when you actually got to think about it, you were like, how unbelievably
The next
clever.
day I came in, didn't I? And I was just like, oh my god!
bearing in mind, Sarah on the coach ride back to the halls was ranting for like the solid. It was like an hour drive back. There was traffic. She did not stop.
fully moaned.
Hated it. Came in the next day. Did twice as long a rant about how incredible it was. And
How
I think
amazing it was. And I literally stayed up for a good, like, kind of 4 hours after we got home, and I was just like, wow.
she kept on just popping in
And
and
just
being like,
thinking
"Oh, there's
of
another
different
thing."
things, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So I think that's a real anti-hero performance, if we're gonna
Well,
use the term loosely,
well-
because we hated it, but it was
Amazing.
amazing.
I think the reason
And-
I enjoyed it I've never stopped. Like I always
You were
enjoyed it as soon as
the
it
only
finished.
person.
Everyone else enjoyed it. I was like, that was really good, and Sarah's like, no.
I was gonna say, even some of our people in the year above us went to sleep.
Yeah,
next,
they did.
Next to our lecturers
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
like next to Neil.
Even our lecturers were like, well, you know.
It was fascinating.
I think.
But I think everyone kind of came back the next day feeling a lot better about
Yeah.
what they'd seen.
But go
I
on,
agree.
you were-
No, I agree with it because I think it's the same way. It's anti-humor in a way. It's anti what it says in the title is this is real magic. It's nothing to do with magic. It's just anti-humor. It's not giving you what you want. It's giving you the entire opposite. Instead of delivering on, should we say, a actual magic trick, it keeps resetting before we get to it, and it's a constant repetition of it to the point where not only you're watching probably exhausted performers on stage who have to keep getting changed into a chicken costume, wasn't it?
Yes,
Yeah, and you're exhausted because you're physically like, just put yourself at ease and just end it, because then if you end it, our viewership ends and we can leave and go back on our coach and rant. But that's the point. I think that's what made it really entertaining, is because it's testing you as well as the performers of what you can tolerate as a performance. And that's what makes it such an anti kind of performance, because it's not there for, I wouldn't say it's there for enjoyment. I don't think it's even there for a form of education. It's just there to see what can you
Just
stand.
there to put you through something.
Yeah.
You were sat there and it was the whole way through, we were like, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. And then one thing changed, like overnight we were thinking about it, and then all of a sudden it became good. And I think in that way the performance was much like Megamind.
Well, it's like guy dressed in blue
Megamind.
with blue hair.
I feel like also if you say that Forced Entertainment's piece was an anti-hero piece,
Yeah.
let's say, then I almost feel like Vincent Gambini's This Is Not a Magic Show would then be the hero piece. I did hero in inverted commas.
you could
Hero
not tell.
piece.
Why would that be hero?
Because that is essentially what you expect from...
I think it's a villain.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah.
Oh no,
I see why- I see why you say villain.
Make your point for hero,
But I
and
know-
then you make your
go
point
on.
for villain, and you shush.
Yes.
Then you should.
Proceed.
We'll be quiet and just watch. Go on, Ellis first.
No, I think mainly because even from the title saying this is not a magic show, you're automatically going to expect that it's going to be a magic show. Even though Vincent Gambini's way of doing it, he kind of said, okay, so this is how it's going to go. I'm going to say hello, and then I'm going to do a magic trick that involves a coin, and then you're like, oh, okay. So you're expecting it, but it's, I don't know, I just, like, if you compare it to Real Magic by Forced Entertainment, I feel like that is the hero version, because Real Magic, you were like, oh, okay, cool, Real Magic, and then you got there and you were bored stiff and you absolutely hated it. Whereas This Is Not a Magic Show, you're like, oh, it's not going to be a magic show, so I'm not bothered. But then it turns out that it's actually what was a very good magic show, very good, please see it. No, yeah, and I feel like because of that, because they kind of swapped over, I think that's the thing that makes it the heroic performance out of the two.
So why is it a villain, Sarah?
Yeah.
I think that it is a villain because it changes what it does to us every single second of that performance. So, This Is Not a Magic Show. Very good, please go and see it. Is, okay, you go in there, this is not a magic show, this is going to be someone talking about magic or something related to magic, or there's going to be some kind of magic talk, but we're not too sure what. You go in, the first thing that happens is a magic trick. You then, 5 minutes later, find out that the magic trick's not actually a magic trick and he's tricking us with the magic trick. So then you're kind of there going, so this is a magic show, but this isn't a magic show. And I think it does something completely different to real magic because it entertains and it captivates you. But I think it captivates you so much that when it drops you in those moments where you go, oh, hold on a minute, wait, that's not real, you're left then. And you kind of go, oh, okay, right. And then he has to pick you back up again. And I feel like he does that constantly. And it's like this roller coaster of him picking you up and dropping you every 5 minutes with this, actually, I'm going to do something really cool and it's actually real this time. And then you realise, actually, there's just a projector on the back wall and the person's going to say something that the other person's already
So
knows.
would you say the same about Tom Kasani's, what's that performance called? the roads are dangerous, drive home safe.
Something like that, yeah.
Something I can't remember for the life of me what the performance was called. But it was by Tom Pisani. Would you say that was? Would you say that was similar to Vincent Gambini's then? Because he kind of led you on a tangent. He told a story while he was going, and then did magic tricks while you were there, and he brought members from the audience up and stuff like that.
I was one of them. I don't know.
I've got no idea what this show is.
So,
I
do you
can't
remember
remember.
there was a show.
He was and
Just for clarification, Ellis said he was really fit.
Yeah.
yeah.
No, nail in the nose. He did like the grotesque magic and the bear trap.
Yeah. So would you say that was?
I thought that was you.
That was anti-hero-y, or
Looks like me.
or would you say that is more in the grey area between hero
I
and
couldn't
anti-hero?
tell you.
Just for clarification, it was called Someone Loves You, Drive With Care.
There we go.
I think it's in the grey area
there we
because
go,
you could
yeah.
argue.
Lovely name.
Because I don't know if that's manipulative because is it I don't know, and I'm asking generally right now, is that based on a real...
You were manipulated.
Because I was manipulated because I got on stage because he asked me to hold his hand while he told the story about, was it his friend who had a car crash and passed, and I couldn't tell if my hand was sweaty or his hands were sweaty, but there was kind of this nervousness when on stage. I felt through him, and he probably definitely felt through me because I was wearing a thick coat and those lights were hot. But like, also it was a really sad story. But is that manipulative because he's now altering my perspective because I'm standing there with him and I'm feeling a lot of sympathy towards him and towards this narrative he's telling me. But I don't know if that's real or if that's fiction.
I think I can answer that for you
Go on.
with this artist bio that I found when I was double checking the name of his performance. And it says, Tom Casani is a performance artist and a liar. He's interested in how he can use elements of deception, misdirection and lying in his artistic practice. And I think that piece, that the Someone Loves You, Drive With Care, is the perfect example of all of those things, because I think you were being completely and utterly manipulated at that time, but it made us feel sympathy for him and you because of how vulnerable you appeared.
Yeah.
And he showed elements of strength while on the stage while doing some of the grotesque magic.
I mean, some of that stuff was just horrible.
There was bear trap, you said, and there was a fish
yeah,
hook, wasn't there?
Yeah, he put his fish hook through his nostril and then through his mouth.
the actual nail.
The
and
nail,
hammer.
and then he drank the needles as well.
Did he make bang? I swear he did the one where he turned away.
He turned away and
shot his finger.
Shot the cup off the table.
Yeah.
Right
Yeah.
Oh, spoilers! He turns around and
Nothing happens.
fucking
Nothing
nothing
happens.
happens.
I suppose that kind of thing where you start to dabble into magic, it becomes a huge grey area because magic in itself is just a big lie.
Yeah, it's all one.
Sorry
massive
for
deception.
anyone under 6 who's listening to that.
Santa is real.
Oh, I hate us. No, but you're right.
Everyone's shaking their head.
But I mean, yeah, when you get into magic, I absolutely love magic. And when we went to go and see This Is Not a Magic Show by Vincent
Bangini.
Vincent Gambini, go and see it, it's really good.
What was the second one called? 'Cause he did two.
Yeah, that was the one we saw
I
in
can
first
never
year.
remember
This
the
is a
name
magic
of it.
trick.
It's
this
like
is not a magic show.
the art of...
Lying or something.
No,
it was like...
Oh, it was like an alliteration, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Why didn't you make the point? I'll double check it.
Yeah. What was the point?
I don't know.
This is why I like magic. Yeah, it's
Oh,
manipulative.
yeah, I absolutely love magic. And when we went to go and see This Is Not a Magic Show, I sat in the front row. I was hoping so much that I'd get picked to do this magic trick because I wanted to be manipulated by him. So, I don't know if I've just disproven my own point with it being villainous necessarily, because if I'm willing to want to be tricked and deceived by the magic because I find it entertaining and genuinely just amazing.
Chair of Enchantment.
Chair of Enchantment,
That was
that was
like a
it.
year ago.
Yeah, if I want to put myself in that position, then does he become a villain? Does he become my hero because he's actually doing that? I mean, he never picked me. So, Vincent Gambini, if you're listening.
I got picked in the one in.
Yeah, I know, sitting next to me.
In the one in his second one, the Chair of Enchantment. He set up this, again, a complete lie, I think, unless it did go wrong, but he set up this idea that this trick went wrong because that it was as though he had someone set to sit in the seat that I was sat in, and I'd sat there before she could. So there was a woman sat behind me who before the show was really, really chatty with me, and I was like, this is really weird. She never asked to sit where I was sat, so that was fine. Anyway, at one point in the show, he did a story where he was talking about how he'd asked someone to pick a card, and they said a particular card, I think it was like the Ace of Hearts or something, and they said that card back to him and he produced it, but that person was a liar. He'd set that person there as a liar, and no one in the audience knew, but he knew, which is why he picked them. And then a bit later on in the show, he came to me and asked me to pick a card, and I was thinking back on that story, and I was like, is that him trying to put that in my mind? Should I say that card? Should I not say that card? And it was a whole thing, and yeah, it was very clever.
No, he also set up the lie kind of in the beginning of the Chore of Enchantment. He did a card trick right at the beginning, and he dropped a card, and you could sense in the audience there was like a kind of
There
murmuring.
was so much unease.
Yeah, because we were like,
about
do we
that
tell him?
card.
We were like, do we tell him that he's dropped a card? What do we do in this kind of situation? We were like, is it part of the performance? Is it a genuine mistake?
Well, if you
Because
think,
I'm pretty sure that card was the card that he tricked
Yeah.
me into saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
and if you think that kind of to traditional theatre, we go to the theatre and we go, oh, that person's dropped something on the stage. I hope someone moves that prop in a minute because you've dropped it and you've messed up.
And then you see the sort of awkward background person
Yeah,
scaring on.
or you
kind of
see
thing.
an actor run across the stage and try and casually pick up the thing they've dropped or
That
whatever.
far too many
They
times.
do the thing where but no, they pick it up and they hold it up and they're like, oh dear, like they sort of make that
Yeah.
thing, like that pantomime
They
thing.
do
Yeah.
something and you see that prop be removed and everything kind of goes and it almost breaks the fourth wall with it and kind of, makes you kind of just, you're not in the moment, you're not suspending your disbelief anymore, you're just kind of in this place where you're like, there's a prop. But that card, it was like really, really liminal. It was just like, is it not? I don't know. He's not noticed it, but he's walked past it, and I know that he knows it's there. Is he just not going to pick it up?
And
Is
he
he
almost
gonna
like
pick it up?
stepped over it without deliberately stepping over
Yeah.
it. It was
Yeah.
like it was an accidental step over and that his footsteps were just big enough. It was just really cleverly done and I hated it.
And then, but like I said, there was a ripple through the audience. There was where it's kind of like you are literally in this stage of, does he know and is it part of the trick, or does he not know and his trick is genuinely going to go wrong? If it is, rip him.
But also,
So-
with his sort of shows, there's that element of, is audience participation allowed? Like, if you go to a pantomime, you can heckle, basically. Like, there's certain, not heckle, but like...
you leave pantomimes
No,
out of this.
but like, alright, it's fine. Like, when we went to go and see the Rocky Horror Show, things like heckling
God, that was a
and
night.
communicating... It was a messy one. And communicating with the performers is... Shush a second. Those sort of things are very clear... Stop talking, I'm talking. Those sort of shows, there's very like clear rules that you can say things, you can interrupt, you can point out things that have gone wrong, you can take the mick.
You can
Magic-
shout Liz McDonald to the
Yeah.
actor
2
who
pints
used
of
to
lager.
be.
Liz
You know, 2
McDonald.
pints of lager and a packet of crisp boys and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, there's also... But then when you go to see a magic show, as much as the magician is welcome to call on you and will sometimes go to everyone like, ooh, magic, and there's that idea of the audience can communicate. With the way he sets up his shows, it's like, this is like actual theatre, and I know that I'm not allowed to shout out, but also I know that he's going to call on people, so do we point it out if we get called on? Are we, as an audience, allowed to tell him? It was like you're saying, there's that weird sort of space, and with those rules of theatre, it was like, do we respect them, or do we follow the rules of magic? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As fun as this one is, I feel like we've gone massively off topic.
Yeah, so the point is
So-
Vincent Gambini is a villain because he never called on Sarah. That's the rules. of
He's
season.
my villain,
And Tom Casani
but
is
to
a liar.
you, he's a hero. So, actually, again, we're back at the beginning of this whole thing of when is an anti-hero, or a hero?
And I think that you can't really define it genuinely. I don't think it's possible to define it. Some people out there might be able to define it, but we are awesome.
If you can, tweet at
nerds,
us, T-Quibblers, T-Quibs on...
something like that.
We'll put the links down below.
We know our social media.
Yes. Okay.
But anyway,
Thank you for listening in for episode 3, and we shall soon be uploading this at some point.
In about 6 months from now.
Yeah, boy.
let's not date this.
All right. So sick.
Bye.
Peace out.
Bye.